Here, I'll show you some tactics for your LinkedIn connection request invitation messages. And instead of just showing you a bunch of different examples that I receive every day, I'm going to simplify this by using a spectrum. And on one side of the spectrum, we have what I would call misdirection. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have what I would refer to as a very direct sales and selling approach. And what I mean by misdirection is it's kind of a bait and switch. I get a lot of LinkedIn connection invitation requests, and it is a salesperson that is trying to hide the fact that they are a salesperson and that they want to sell something, and they're trying to portray themselves as being a networker and just wanting to connect and being on LinkedIn, and that there's no interest in selling to me. Your profile is interesting, would be great to have you in my network, or you popped up in my recommendations list, let's connect. So something that is very far from their true intention, which is I'm a salesperson trying to sell something. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you actually have salespeople that are extremely direct, sometimes too direct, where in their connection request, they actually say, I sell this product or service. Do you need this? If so, accept my connection request. Now, I think that neither of these sides are great because regarding the bait and switch and misdirection, I think that presents a problem when you want to try to sell to that person and present yourself having intentions in one area and then you totally change to trying to sell to that person. I think it shows a bit of dishonesty and it starts you out on the wrong foot regarding that connection that you're trying to sell to. But on the other extreme, if you're completely transparent, you're going to have people that don't accept your connection request. So if connecting with prospects is part of your sales strategy, being completely transparent will greatly reduce the number of people that you're able to connect with, and that will impact the success of that strategy. So what I recommend you do is try to be somewhere in the middle. And what I would call this is be authentic without selling. So we don't want to mislead and present ourselves as somebody that we're not. And we also don't want to just come out of the gate in our invitation to connect totally creating an impression that we're a salesperson trying to sell something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few LinkedIn connection invitation examples that take you in this direction. And the LinkedIn connection request examples are actually going to be filled in with a sales message that I've created. I actually went through this process to create this sales message. I'm not going to show you this process to create the sales message. I'll actually put a link to the video where I go through this step-by-step process. If you want to use our process to create your sales message so that you can fill in the examples and templates that I'm going to share with you. And when we go through that process, each of those steps gives us building blocks. So we'll have a value points building block, a pain points building block, and so on. And then what we can do is we can use those building blocks to create all of our different cold call scripts and cold email messages, but we can also use those building blocks to create our connection requests. And so here is a connection request example that uses our value points building block. And so it says, hello, Michael. Came across your profile and thought it would be good to connect because we help sales trainers to make it easier to teach reps what to say. Would be great to add you to my network. Now, a couple things about this template. First of all, I've color-coded it so that you can see what I filled in from my sales message. And if you follow our process to create your sales message, you can replace the color-coded text with verbiage from your sales message using the key. Regarding this message as a whole, you may see that and say a couple things. First of all, I'm not saying that this is a message that they're going to read and say, oh, I want to buy what you sell. And that's not our goal. Remember, we're trying to stay in the middle there. We want to be authentic without selling. So this doesn't mislead them to think that we're just looking to network and make friends. We definitely are a business person, a business representative, but we're also not a pesky salesperson and looking to just sell to them right out of the gate with all our effort. This message is also really short, which your connection request messages need to be. So it doesn't tell our whole story, and you can continue to build off of this and tell the rest of your story in your cold email messages. But this is the first example, and the next connection invitation request example uses your pain points building block, and the structure of the message is fairly similar with a few changes. But hello, Michael, came across your profile and thought it would be good to connect because we work with sales trainers and help with the difficulty of teaching reps everything they need to say. Would be great to add you to my network. So again, a lot of the same logic that I just talked about with the first example. And the third LinkedIn connection invitation request example uses your customer example building block, and it goes, hello, Michael, came across your profile and thought it would be good to connect because we helped a sales trainer to make it easier to teach reps what to say, and that led to improved performance for every rep on their team. Would be great to add you to my network. So again, if you follow our process and have your sales message, it's real easy to plug your information into those templates if you like them. But whether you use our connection templates or not, once you make that connection, then if you're using LinkedIn to sell, you then need to follow up at some point with a LinkedIn cold email. And one of the great things about going through our process to create your sales message is that it gives you those building blocks, and you can also use all of those building blocks to create your LinkedIn cold email messages. And you can actually create multiple messages to create a LinkedIn cold email campaign and send multiple messages to your LinkedIn connections. And so here's an example of the first message in that series, which uses your value points building block. And it just starts out, great to add you to my network. Came across your profile because we help sales trainers to benefit. And you can read the rest of the message there. I'll go through these quickly. If you want to read them or copy them, just click pause. Second message uses your pain points building block. We know that a lot of sales trainers have challenges with pain point. Third message uses your customer example building block, bringing in a pain point and a couple benefits. The fourth message uses your pain questions and shares the questions that you want to ask them. Fifth message starts to get to the product that you're trying to sell. By the way, this is email 5 in the series. This is typically email number 1 that I receive from salespeople right after I accept their invitation to become connections. So imagine the improvement there if you adopt this process. You're going to send all of those other messages before you start to get to, hey, this is what I sell. Do you need what I sell? And then email 6 is a last attempt email that you can send that uses your value points building block. So I hope that gives you some ideas of how to modify your connection request messages and how to message your prospects after becoming connections if you're going to use that process. I actually recommend that you don't use that process, and I think that that process is not optimum for a couple reasons. First of all, if your sales process includes a step to become connections before you start reaching out and selling to that prospect, that's an additional step you have to take. So that technically slows you down and adds an additional step to your sales process. The other thing is that not everybody is going to accept your invitation to become connections. So what about all those prospects that you find on LinkedIn that you send an invitation to become connections that don't accept your invitation? You're just not going to sell to those prospects and they're going to completely fall off of your radar? Well, that doesn't sound great. It's also a little delicate to shift to sales mode after becoming connections. Regardless of your invitation to connect message, after you become connections, I think you really need to be careful with how you try to sell to this person, because that person does not accept your invitation to connect for you to sell to them. They are inviting you into their network. And so when you become connections and then you start to sell to them, I'm not saying that this is impossible or something that you shouldn't do, but it's delicate. And if you understand that, this is something you need to be aware of and figure out a way to dance around. And the LinkedIn inbox is not the optimum place for you to sell to your prospects and to these contacts for a couple reasons. First of all, the LinkedIn message window where your message is read is much smaller than a traditional email inbox. What this means is you have less real estate to work with, and that smaller window will make your message look longer, which means you have to be even more careful about the number of words you use in your message before the prospect feels like, oh, this is an extremely long message that I don't feel like reading and I want to delete it. You have to deal with that less in a traditional email inbox, which has more real estate to work with, allowing you to send longer email messages. But not just that. If you think about the amount of time per day that a prospect looks at their business email inbox versus their LinkedIn email inbox, there's there's much more time spent looking at their business email inbox, making that a better place for your message, either to be read or to be saved and to be found later, and even to be filed away. The prospect may receive some of your messages and want to hang on to them, file them away for when they need what you sell. That's very difficult to do in the LinkedIn inbox. And so you might hear all that and think, well, that all makes sense, but I have to become connections to get the email address so I can send the email to their business email inbox. And here's another problem with becoming connections. In order to get that, I would say about 50% of the time when you become connections on LinkedIn, you're going to get a personal email address. If you become connections with me, you're going to get my Gmail address. So then if you want to send me your cold email message or messages, those are going to come to my Gmail inbox. And where you want your cold email message to go is to your prospect's business email inbox. And you're not guaranteed to get that after you become connections. So if you agree with all that, I actually have an alternative strategy that you can use, which is actually to skip the whole connection step. What I recommend you do is actually use LinkedIn to find the target prospects that you want to connect with, but don't connect with them through LinkedIn. Send them email messages to their business email inbox. And you may think, well, I have to connect on LinkedIn because I don't have their email address. And here's the trick. We actually use a tool inside of SalesScripter called the Email Guesser. And what the Email Guesser does is that it helps you to guess the prospect's email address if you have 3 pieces of information. If you have the first name, the last name, and the company website address, what the Email Guesser will do is that it will run a test ping against the most common combinations of those values, because most prospects, their business email inbox is most likely some combination of those 3 values. And the great thing about LinkedIn is that you can get those 3 pieces of information extremely quickly from a prospect's LinkedIn profile. And once you enter those into the Email Guesser, within a few seconds, you have their business inbox email address, and then you can start sending your cold email messages to that without connecting and without sending LinkedIn in-mail messages. So not only does this help to shortcut your LinkedIn process by completely removing the request to connect step, but it gets your cold email messages to the prospect's business email inbox, which I personally believe is a much better place for your message to be seen, to be retained, and to be read. Now, if everything I just shared with you is interesting and you want a little bit more information, I've actually gone through that process in more detail in a cold email prospecting workshop. And what I'll do is I'll include links to those videos in the description below. That's much it. If you have any questions or want more information, the best place to go is salescripter.com. If you want more tips, there are plenty of videos there with helpful tips. There are ebooks you can download for free. If you have questions on the product of SalesScripter, that's the best place to go. There are videos that demonstrate all of the different features of the software. And if you want to contact us, that's the best place to go. You can get our phone number, email address, and there's a chat window as well. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.